Hi, my name is David Perrodin, and I want to welcome you to Inclusion of Students with Special Needs, a 2-credit graduate course with Viterbo University in the fall of 2016. So, Education 506, hopefully that's what you've registered for, and the class will begin on August 29th and will conclude on December 16th. So, again, my name is David and I am the instructor for the class. I've been with Viterbo for 13 years and have served as a school administrator and also as a school safety consultant. Worked this summer on an intruder film with a Pulitzer Prize winning author and producer, so that's kind of what I do when I'm not doing my faculty teaching, and I also work at Wisconsin Center for the Blind and Visually Impaired in the therapy department. So, but my fireplace is right here, which means this is a fireplace chat, and we will have one of these per module. So this is our intro. This is intro to the course, and then during module 1, so the course, talk about these modules. We have 7 modules in the course. And when you log in to the course, you will see that there are the 7 modules and the dates that they run. When we get to the last module, it's almost a month long, and the reason it is longer than the rest, because you have your keystone project due, the Bill Porter plan, during that module. So it gives you more time to focus on that. Obviously, educators, when you get to that last month before the winter break, things get really busy. And with Thanksgiving, kind of breaking that time up too, I think it served better to readjust the calendar the way that I have to give you more time in that last module to work on your Bill Porter plan, which I'll talk about more in a little bit. So again, we do have these 7 modules. What I encourage you to do is to go into Moodle and to become familiar with it. If you haven't used it already, it's very intuitive. Viterbo has a number of tutorials you can use also to become more familiar with it. Anything you do, I can undo, so don't worry about that. What I ask is that you, again, go into the course, check the materials. What you'll see initially is Module 1 will appear, and then after that, Module 2 will appear, Module 1 will stay. Eventually Module 3 will come up, and then Module 2 and 1. So it'll be progressive. I will keep opening modules before they before their open date. I'll open them a day or two before. But I don't put all the modules out there at once because I don't want people to just kind of get into class and do everything all at once and then not really let the module develop and soak in and have that rich discussion with the discussion threads. So it is meant to be progressive the way that I have class designed. So when you get to the 2nd module, it builds off the 1st, the 3rd builds off the 2nd and the 1st, and so forth until we get to the very end where you're taking everything that you've gathered through the modules and putting it together in your Bill Porter plan. So I'm easy to access. The best way is probably via text or by my Viterbo email. If you do text me, I typically will respond back almost immediately. If there's any need to have a phone discussion, we can set that up. But normally, if you have any questions for me, please just email me in my Viterbo account, which is the only account that I post. And there is a questions thread also in the course, so you can go in and post a general question like, how do you check how many posts you've made? Anybody can respond to that. So if you know the answer to that, go in and post that. It's very important that you be an active poster in the course. So we will have different threads. I will go and I'll make responses, but in addition to me, I need each of you going in and making responses to what your peers are posting. That's going to be critical to keeping the course discussions going. And that has always worked well in the past to do that. There is no such thing as posting too much. I would say in this format, every few days you should be accessing the course to see what has been posted, what's different. And looking at adding any of your information to that. You might read a post that somebody else has made, and you're thinking, boy, I had a similar something similar that I went through, and here's an idea that I used when I was working on providing inclusive services to a student that presented with these types of needs, or something to that effect. You'll get my lead on seeing how I respond. I usually will copy a little bit of someone's post, and then I'll put that in my response and kind of focus in on that. I will access the class, almost daily, but I will not respond to every single post that you've made, because literally that can be hundreds of posts in a week. But you will see that I do go in, and I am checking the class on a regular basis. You'll see my post also. And we have an announcements section, so make sure when you go in you always check the announcements, because I will put something in there like, I've updated the grade book, so go in and check it. One thing too is the grade book will be updated, probably about on a monthly basis. So don't worry if you're going into the grade book and you're not seeing things posted, unless I've made a post saying I've updated the grade book, including modules 1, 2, and 3. So then, go in and check and make sure that what I'm reporting out for your grades during those modules is accurate to what you are expecting. So, but otherwise, no, I don't typically update more often than that. There really isn't a need. So some assignments that you'll work on. So we talked about the discussion threads, but there's a few assignments in addition to that. And one will be a timeline of inclusion. And this assignment is going to allow you to be very divergent. So one of the things in this class is you have a number of ways to demonstrate learning. So you can do that by posting, okay, I'm going to back this up a little bit. So let's go to this assignment, timeline of inclusion. Some students will choose to produce a PowerPoint timeline. I've included, I think, a sample of one student that did that. And students can pick any range of topics for inclusion. Someone picked the inclusion of students with disabilities, and they used dolls. They went back and talked about how there was a polio doll that was initially invented, and how American Girl, produced a doll with a hearing aid, and so forth, and used a progression of how inclusion was fostered in more of a mainstream setting. Other people look at it from a legislative approach. Some people look at it from athletics, and some people look at it from prosthetics. People look at it from technology. It's pretty endless, but you can get really creative with how you want to take that on. So, the sky is the limit. Again, you'll see the what the requirement is for that assignment, and then you can get very creative in how you address that. So students have produced PowerPoints, they've produced their own little videos that they put together on that. They've used Prezis, they've used, just someone created one time a game which was like a Jeopardy type game, and they did it online, and I'm not exactly sure, but it had to do with the timeline. So you can be very creative in how you're demonstrating your learning. A chunk of this class is devoted to universal design for learning, which is a little bit later into class, but once we get to that, again, it is focusing on allowing students to demonstrate learning in many different ways. And also that you are using differentiated instruction to deliver educational enrichment in different ways. We have about 80% of our learning that is visual, but if you're not a visual learner, or the students that I work with who are either visually impaired or blind, you're not able to use that 20 or that 80%. You have to rely on the other 20% and capitalize on being very multisensory, which I think is already a very good way to deliver instruction. Auditorily, olfactory, tactile, whatever you can work into your ways that you deliver instruction, and then also that you accept learning to come back. So universal design for learning is a big portion of this course content that we'll get into later. But again, as I instructed, as you develop it through the discussion threads, feel free to go in and use all different means to demonstrate that you are expressing learning through universal design for learning. Again, produce a video or produce a Prezi or whatever. Or if you want, I mean, you can do a written response, that's fine. So I'm going to work us a little bit down the road. We get into an assignment where I do have you basically interview or observe some of your teaching peers. Now, if you do not have a teaching peer at the moment, like you're not a teacher at the moment, don't worry about that. You just need to be a little creative then in either remembering back to when you were in the classroom or interviewing someone that is currently, teaching. So what that involves is basically an observation and discussion of co-teaching. What do you see in a co-teaching model? Or do you see a teach and assist if a special education teacher is in the classroom, which is pretty common. It's not as common that the special education teacher and the regular education teacher have the same kind of delivery footing. Usually it's the regular education teacher delivering the instruction and the special education teacher then assisting students with special needs on strategies on how to absorb, make sense of that instruction. But really, if we're talking about peer co-teaching, that then gets into things like common planning time and schedule, and making sure that that special education teacher and regular education teacher work together on developing the lesson, delivering the lesson, assessing the lesson. So that's part of the discussion. Do you see that? If not, what are the barriers to it? Do you see teach and assist? Do you see station teaching, where students go, kind of from station to station, where it's a lot of kind of self-education that's done? The student interprets a rubric, what the expectations are, maybe works with peers, demonstrates learning by performing that task to peers. Or maybe you just observe a lecture type format that's going on. So if that were the case, you'd say, this is what I'm observing, and this is the bridge we would need to build to get to like a co-teaching model in my school or in the school that I observe. So I do have a rubric in the syllabus that will help you to kind of frame your discussion on that thread. The rubric is not required as part of an assignment. So the rubric kind of looks like there's like a lesson plan you might have to develop or something like that. No, nothing like that. It's just there though to help frame what you are going to be looking at when you're interviewing a teacher about instructional practices. So anything we do in this class, we have to put through a lens of inclusion. So how is what we're doing impacting students as far as a more inclusive environment? So students with special needs, but we think about students with disabilities naturally, but English language learners, it could be students who are shy, could be students with anxiety, could be a student with a food allergy. Just how do you make a classroom, foster a classroom culture that is welcoming of all students and embracing differences? One of the things I want to discuss, and I'll probably get into this more in Module 1 once we have that discussion, but people say teach tolerance as a way to promote inclusion. Well, I think teaching tolerance is kind of a basement level activity, meaning we're better than teaching tolerance. We should be teaching acceptance. Acceptance is to take that step of understanding the other person, understanding the context of that other person, and not that you have to agree with the other person, but at least you are educating yourself as to understanding that person in their context. So what it does, I think, is it eliminates the discrimination which can come in as a part of tolerance. It's very easy to demonstrate tolerance by just completely ignoring somebody and claiming that that's tolerance. And again, we're better than that. But by doing acceptance, you can accept that that person is different. Not everybody is everybody's friend. You know, not every student has every other student as a friend. But they would accept what that student, what they bring to the classroom. And also, I just think it's such a higher level of thinking than what we've typically expected by the teaching tolerance movement. So I'll get in more into that, elaborate, and let some of our threads kind of flesh that out. So when we get to the end of class, we have the Bill Porter project. You'll be watching a video, which is about 20 minutes long. I'll link it out. And it's about Bill Porter. So you can go online if you want to learn more. ABC 2020, Bill Porter, A Moving Journey. Bill was a door-to-door salesman in Portland, Oregon, with cerebral palsy. So the documentary occurred when Bill was an adult. He was in his 60s, I believe, when this documentary occurred. And Bill talks about when he was in school and the challenges he encountered as far as educational opportunities, and then also the social bullying that occurred and some of the other things, and the barriers to inclusion. So what you're going to do is you're going to take Bill and place him at whatever level you're teaching. So if you're a 4th grade teacher, then Bill can be a 4th grade student. Early childhood teacher, Bill's early childhood. If you're teaching high school math, then imagine that Bill's going to be in your high school math class. If you're a reading specialist, then imagine you'll be working with Bill, or else working on a team with the classroom teacher to educate staff and students about Bill and about cerebral palsy. So regardless of what you're doing, somehow you're going to be serving Bill. It's a narrative that you write. It's a fun assignment, but it's going to take everything that we've covered throughout class and bits and pieces that you're going to pull in as you develop this plan for Bill. A lot of people write the assignment in this type of format. Today, my principal met with me and let me know that we have a student who will be starting in a week, and his name is Bill Porter. And Bill will be in my 7th grade classroom. Bill has cerebral palsy, and this is how I'm going to learn about cerebral palsy. So get into that. There's a rubric, other things that you'll have to then identify, such as how you would learn about CP, how you educate staff and students about CP, about Bill, the technology you might use to help an inclusive environment, different disability awareness activities, and then another part is going to be, and people sometimes overlook this is where people might lose points on this assignment, so be very careful not to overlook this. Just follow the rubric, you'll be fine. Activities, social activities that Bill can be involved in. Now again, if Bill's like early childhood, I know that's going to be a challenge, so you could write things like, at this level, there aren't a lot of activities Bill can be included in. However, when he gets into 2nd or 3rd grade, there's student council or Lego club or things like that. Gets into high school, it could be FBLA or whatever. So I'm giving a few things out. How you then socially include Bill and promote his social well-being. Some of that also could be getting Bill connected up with the community parks and rec. So he has some recreational options available to him. And so I'm putting a few of these things out there. You'll see them kind of detailed out very specifically once we get into that module and what the expectations for the assignment are. So typically it's about like a 6 to 8 page paper, and people will email me a year after they've written it saying it's been one of the most moving assignments that they've done, and I hope you feel that way too. So, but again, that's going to be down the road. I'll open that module up. That'll be in our last module. So that'll be in, let's see, November 21st is module 7. So a little bit before then I will open that module up and you'll get to read about the Bill Porter assignment, which would be then due on December 16th. So you have plenty of time to do that. So I'm going through my notes here. There is a book required for the class, so make sure that you get that ordered. I don't know if it's in the bookstore. If not, though, you can order it typically off of Amazon or off of eBay. It's not that much. So I will email, again, I shouldn't say email, but I will post in course announcements anytime that there is a significant update to the course, such as, I've made, I've posted grades, or I've added additional resources, something to that effect. Make sure that you're getting your work in on time. You have plenty of time in this class, the way it's spread out, especially with 2 credits, to get the work done. But the due dates are set, so make sure that you're getting stuff in, especially when we get to the end of class. Once it hits December 16th, your work needs to be in. Please let me know ahead of time if there's any reason you're not able to get things in, and then I can consider an extension. Not that there would be an extension granted, but again, typically you're going to be able to get everything in without any problem at all. So I'm going to talk a little bit about an inclusive experience that I had growing up, and then close out this intro video. And the next video, again, will be the actual Module 1 Fireside Chat, when I'll talk about how I do those. Typically is I do a little update on just kind of things that I've been seeing in class, and then I do shout outs. So maybe like 3, 4, 5 students, I'll say, Ben wrote this, and I want to expand on that a little bit, and Sarah mentioned this in a post, and I'll be doing shout outs for every module. And then I typically go in and we'll do a review of the module, like Module 1. So I will be posting kind of toward the end of each module a review, and then I'll be posting and saying, when we get into Module 2, here's some things that I'm going to be looking for, and here's really the heart of Module 2. And so you'll always see me posting about the current module and then looking ahead to the module that we'll be getting into. But let me share an inclusive experience. When I was growing up, so I was growing up after special education had started, but really at that point it was pull-out services. And I was attending elementary school in the 70s and late 70s, early 80s. But I remember one time I was maybe 3rd grade, and I went to a school that was 4 stories tall, and back then it was 100 years old. So there was like no ADA compliance in this building whatsoever. You had wood stairs that you went up, and it was a brick building, and we had, it was K-8. There was a student with a fragile bone disease, and the way that he would go around the building, so from 1st floor up to the 4th floor, 4th floor was all of the middle school stuff, 6, 7, 8. 2 strong 8th grade boys, one would grab onto each side of his wheelchair and basically zip him up the stairs all the way. And same way, get him back down. And that's just the way that it was done back then, and it worked. This student was with fragile bone disease. Even though he was in a wheelchair and he was very, very small, he definitely had a lot of influence and garnered a lot of respect. Was a very articulate young man, and I remember him very vividly to this day. But I didn't know much about fragile bone disease or much about this young man, and that's part of when we talk about classes like what we're doing right now. It's just a better education for staff and for students, and then also for adults on understanding differences. So we go back to this building. So one day a yellow mobile home was pulled up outside of the back of the building, outside by the back door. Put down, there was a ramp that was built, and that became the mystery building. Nobody knew what it was. Nobody knew. It had no markings, just a yellow mobile home outside the school. And pretty soon, some of my classmates started to disappear. They'd be gone. One was John. And I remember John would leave I don't know if he'd leave the classroom or just between, if it was, say, special, we were coming back from, he just didn't come back to class. But he was gone. And he'd come back in the middle of some lesson, and he always had these really cool stickers. And he would give me a few of them. I was a good friend of his. And then I never knew like where he went or where he got these stickers or what, And there were other students that disappeared. And, but you never knew where they went or why. And soon I learned, John went to the yellow building. And that's pretty much all it was known as, was the yellow building. No one knew it as a special ed building or whatever it was. Just, and so he was gone. John was gone. And it wasn't until I got into high school that I really learned what special education was, when by that level we start to have inclusive education as a delivery model. And it was still in its infancy back then. It was still kind of the pull-out model where students just kind of disappeared. But it was, I didn't know anything about some of the special needs of my peers. We did have a student who had cerebral palsy, which I didn't know what cerebral palsy was. I didn't understand that most people with cerebral palsy have normal intellect, how I should interact with that person, how I shouldn't, until much later in life. So that was a very interesting experience of growing up, of that yellow mobile home as kind of the epitome of that start of special ed pull-out services. And back then, it was people trying to do the right thing, and it was a vast improvement over doing nothing, and there wasn't any harm that was meant by it. But today we think of that and say, oh, we would never do something like that. And so we'll get into this class and have those type of discussions over practices that are evolving or practices you're seeing in your school that are evolving, and also discussions of some of the challenges. For example, the fastest growing area right now for identification of students with special needs would be students with anxiety disorder. And that can be it's very unique to address. I remember working with a student with a severe anxiety disorder that could not step foot in school. All right, getting my words ahead of me right now, but so complete school phobia. What we did is we set up a video system where the student could log in and basically kind of have a Skype connection into the classroom, could see the classroom could see the student. That was the first way for the student to become more included with the classroom. Eventually the student was coming to school for a very limited amount of time, and then we were able to lengthen that time. The student would come to the class and be present for maybe 20 minutes and then be in a room where she was able to kind of work on her own for another 20 minutes and then go home, and again we expanded out from there. But it was, what we were doing was based on the student's needs. This is what the student could tolerate. You could see her actually kind of start to shake, and we worked with her physician and her parents, and it was, again, a severe anxiety disorder, school phobia, and it was in other settings also. And but imagine if you're a peer and you don't understand why this student can't be in school, and why I'm speaking into a camera to this student. What is anxiety disorder, and how you work on that so it's not stigmatized. So again, that's something as we get through this class of thinking about how to avoid stigmatizing because of differences. So, all right, enough about me and stories, and I'm excited to teach this class. I love Viterbo University, and if you have any questions, please contact me. Otherwise, I'll be responding. I'm always, watching too. If you haven't posted for 6-7 days, you're probably going to get an email from me, or a text, or even a phone call just saying, hey, I noticed you haven't been in class. Is everything okay? because I want to make sure if there's something that's a barrier, something you're not quite certain on how to address, that we get that taken care of. So I will have the class open. It's time in advance so you can get in and tour around. The last thing before I close is make sure that on Monday, August 29th, make sure on that day you are logging into class and posting your biography. It is important for me to have documentation that you have accessed class on the 29th. And the reason that is so important is it links back to financial aid. And I don't know how this all works, but the university needs to have documentation that you've accessed class at the start of class. So if you're receiving financial aid, it's a very important documentation piece. Again, I don't know how it all works, but you can't all of a sudden, September 8th, make your first post in class if you're receiving class through financial aid. You need to be in there that first day. After that, we're fine. As long as you keep participating, posting in class. But everybody needs to get in on that first day on the 29th. So, all right. I am, again, glad to be here, glad to be teaching. And most of the fireside chats are going to be 25 minutes long, right in that range, not as long as this video. This is our kickoff, this is your intro, this is telling you what to expect. Go ahead and read through the syllabus. Any questions, email me, post questions in the questions thread. But we're going to have a great time, and I'm looking forward to working with all of you and getting to know you. So thanks a lot. Any questions, again, contact me.